Mr. President.
The senator from Delaware is recognized.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the proceedings of the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, I come to the floor this afternoon because this week, the Senate has a chance to take another crucial step away from the political cliffs and manufactured crises of previous years and to get back to the regular order, to get back to the considered, measured, orderly process on this floor that for so long was characteristic of this body. In past considered the greatest deliberative body on earth, but in recent years it has ground to a halt. It is critical that we return to regular order and that we return to the steady consideration of appropriations bills in a way that will move not just this Senate, this Congress, but this country forward. I'd like to thank the chair and ranking members of the Appropriations Committee, Senators Mikulski and Shelby, for their leadership and their steadfast determination to work in a bipartisan manner and bring us back to regular order. We are considering today a collection, or what is called here a minibus, instead of an omnibus, of 3 appropriations bills: agriculture, rural development, and Food and Drug Administration, commerce, justice, and science, and transportation and housing and urban development. An unbelievable scope across these 3 appropriations bills that could in combination make a real and significant difference for our communities, our states, and our country. This is an opportunity for this Congress to carry out its duties to provide oversight and direction and to help all the different agencies I just named to move forward and address some of our most important priorities. As a member myself of the Appropriations Committee, I've advocated for some of what are our nation's top priorities embedded in these 3 important bills. So I'd like to speak for a few minutes about how these bills will first help my home state of Delaware, second, help our country, and then third, about the important obligation we have as senators to return to regular order and to use the appropriations process for oversight and for management of this whole federal project. For Delaware, these 3 bills invest in a number of areas. I could talk about literally dozens of things that are critical to my home state, but let me focus on 2: public safety and infrastructure. When you think about it at the local level, which is where I served for a decade in county government, these really are part of the foundation of what government does and does well. Keep our people, our homes, our communities, our families safe, and provide for the sewer water and the drinking water and the highways and the tollways and the bridges and the ports that are critical to moving commerce and our country forward. This bill extends children's advocacy centers. Let me talk for a few minutes about what children's advocacy centers are and why it's so vital to public safety in our country. Children's advocacy centers allow communities to bring child abusers to justice without re-traumatizing their victims. Children's advocacy centers are unique because it's a model that brings together under one roof in one place law enforcement, prosecutors, counselors, and child service professionals, all focusing on how to best care for and move forward with a child who has been a victim of abuse. In Delaware, we have 3 centers, 1 in each of our 3 counties. And though I wish we didn't need them, the fact is they're indispensable. In my experience in a decade of local government, I was exposed over and over again to the critical role that they play in helping law enforcement secure critical evidence and move forward to conviction against the monsters who commit abuse against our children. Since the creation of these centers, they've transformed our nation's response to child abuse, giving families hope and guidance in their darkest moments and delivering justice to those who have endured the worst. So as we work together to continue to try our best to keep our children safe, this bill allows us to continue to fund child advocacy centers so that we have a more efficient, more effective, more federally sponsored and coordinated way to deliver at a very modest cost this vital resource for our children. Second, as we work to keep our children safe, this bill also allows us to protect those who protect us. Every day, more than 1 million law enforcement officers across this country accept risks to their personal safety as they leave their families at dawn and head off to their jobs. They know that what they accept as part of their mission is the risk they may not come home that night. That's why it's so important that this bill also funds the Bulletproof Vest Partnership. In Delaware, we know its value all too well. Last February at the Newcastle County Courthouse in my hometown of Wilmington, Delaware, a gunman unleashed a hail of bullets into a courthouse lobby, tragically killing 2. On what was a difficult morning in Wilmington, 2 lives were also saved, those of Sergeant Michael Manley and Corporal Steve Reinhardt, members of the Delaware Capitol Police, officers who were wearing bulletproof vests funded by the Federal Bulletproof Vest Partnership. This was a partnership launched by my predecessor, now Vice President Biden. It's been sustained on a bipartisan basis for many years. But without this appropriation, this vital federal-state law enforcement partnership would grind to a halt. Vests work. They save lives. They save officers' lives. And with this bill, we'll be able to ensure even more officers all across this country have life-saving bulletproof vests. So those are 2 areas where, in law enforcement and public safety, this bill continues critical investments in partnership from the federal government to state and local governments. In recent weeks in Delaware, we've also been reminded of just how critical our infrastructure is, our bridges and our roads and our highways. There's a bridge on I-495 that goes across the Christina River, and this is a vital highway for Wilmington and for the whole Mid-Atlantic region. It carries 90,000 drivers a day. But 2 weeks ago, it was closed indefinitely when workers nearby noticed 4 of its pillars were off plumb, were slanted, and then, upon further investigation, discovered that there were cracks in the very foundation holding this bridge 50 feet in the air. Its closure is hurting families and businesses and commuters, and it's just one in a string of recent emergencies all across our country that demonstrate the need for investment in fixing America's roads and bridges. The funding we're considering this week in this bill recognizes that and takes steps to address some of our most urgent needs across this country. It continues to invest in 2 innovative funding vehicles, one called Tiger Grants and another called TIFIA loans. These are acronyms, but they are inventive ways to mobilize private capital in partnership with states and the federal government to get us moving again in repairing and upgrading the roads and bridges of America. They help state and local governments pay for new highways and bridges, public transit projects, railways, and ports. In Delaware, the Port of Wilmington, a critical economic engine for our state and region, secured a $10 million Tiger Grant last year to renovate facilities built in 1922. And on US 301, a little south and west of Wilmington, but still in Delaware, TIFIA grants are helping us do critical work to relieve congestion. In southernmost Delaware, in Georgetown, at the Sussex County Airport, we've also seen the vital role and the value of federal investment. Since 2012, the Sussex County Airport has received $4 million in airport improvement grants to expand its runway and improve safety, and to help grow manufacturing jobs at that Georgetown airport. And with this week's bill, we'll be able to continue making these kinds of critical improvements at airports in Delaware and across our country. Now, I relatively rarely get to fly, but I commute virtually every day back and forth from Wilmington, Delaware to Washington, and I ride on Amtrak when I do so. Today, ridership levels are at a record high, and Delaware's region, the Northeast Corridor, brings in $300 million in profits alone. So it's good that this bill maintains Amtrak's national operations and investments in its capital needs. But I believe we need to do more. We need to step up and do more federally to invest if we want to keep these results, not just in the Northeast, but across the country. We have a more than $6 billion backlog to reach a state of good repair for Amtrak. And as our bridges and tunnels and rail lines get older and older, fixing them will only become more expensive. That's why I intend to offer an amendment to this bill to further increase our investment in the capital needs of Amtrak. This is critical. It's something we need, and we need to start chipping away at this long overdue debt we have, this unaddressed infrastructure debt, if we're going to continue to serve our communities. Now, there's many other great things in these incredibly broad bills that are of national and international importance, and let me just briefly reference a few of them. At home, manufacturing continues to be critical to our economy and our future, and biomanufacturing plays an increasingly important role. The manufacturing of products and materials from renewable sources, from plant-based sources rather than petrochemicals. And for the first time through this bill, will dedicate $15 million to the National Science Foundation's budget for new biomanufacturing initiatives that will allow us to deploy in the marketplace new inventions and innovations. Our competitors aren't holding back on doing so. Countries from the United Kingdom to China are ramping up their investments in new biomanufacturing. In my view, it's time for the United States to refocus our research, to reprioritize our investments, and stay competitive in this vital field. Finally, I'm proud these appropriations bills also support, in the housing area, funding for community development block grants, or CDBG programs. We used them when I was in county government in Delaware to help rehabilitate homes, to help provide for affordable homes, and to help strengthen and sustain jobs in our community. In 2013, so-called CDBG, or Community Development Block Grants, helped 225 families. Some in this body have tried to cut CDBG, but I'm thrilled we've been able to successfully move forward and sustain its support in this bill. While we invest at home, these appropriations bills also make important investments abroad. And one I'd like to briefly highlight is in our international food programs, where we feed millions but can do more. This bill provides for flexibility of our food aid that will allow it to be delivered more efficiently, more quickly, and to feed more who hunger around the world. As businesses also look abroad here from the United States, we're doing more to open new markets for them. One of the investments that I most value that's in this bill in this regard is through an expansion of the Foreign Commercial Service at the Department of Commerce. In particular, its expansion in Africa, where 7 out of 10 of the fastest growing economies in the world are currently growing, but where the United States isn't doing enough to take advantage of these burgeoning export markets for our products. As chair of the African Affairs Subcommittee, I've had a chance to see up close the great opportunities for growth and partnership that Africa offers. There will be 4 new Foreign Commercial Service offices in Angola, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Mozambique, as well as expansion of offices in Kenya, Ghana, Morocco, and Libya. And now we can make investments in them jointly so that our growing partnerships in the sub-Saharan countries I listed can thrive. As I close, Mr. President, I'd also like to make one brief point about why this whole process is important, why we need to pass these appropriations bills rather than just continuing resolutions which go on from year after year that sustain funding but do not engage the minds and the skills of the members of this body in doing oversight of the federal government. As the federal government changes, as our nation's needs change, we need to be able to ensure that our spending, that our focus adapts as well. A great example from this particular minibus bill that's on the floor today is the so-called Crude by Rail Safety Initiative. Within the last year, there have been a number of accidents on our rail networks that demand action. America is today moving more and more oil and hazardous products by rail, so we're putting in place a new approach to do it more safely. The Department of Transportation and Transportation Secretary Fox have delivered a great job responding with the resources and tools they have, but Congress needs to do more. That's why this bill adds 20 new rail and hazardous materials inspectors, adds $3 million to ensure oil routes are safe and sound, creates a new short line safety institute, improves classifications, and extends training for first responders. Without this appropriations bill and regular order, new and timely investments like that are responsive to conditions in the world wouldn't happen. Thus, if I might say, Mr. President, in closing, while our economy changes, we need to change, and we need regular order and regular appropriations bills to be able to do that. I want to thank again the chair and vice chair of the Appropriations Committee, Senators Mikulski and Shelby, for their leadership and their efforts to shepherd a bipartisan process forward. It's critical to our country, to our economy, and to our future.